Good afternoon. Howdy. Man, what's going on? Dick Turpin, huh? Decided to look him up. I'm still not set up totally. I'm trying to figure everything out. What's going on there? I've just been working a lot. Yeah, Dick Turpin, huh? Hey, Ben. Yeah, Ben, you mentioned Dick Turpin. I was like, I kind of know. I kind of heard about him. Mostly haunts a bunch of places. He was a highwayman, but I don't know any of his stories about him. I was looking him up last night. Seems to be a lot of fake stories about him. He's a legend, a myth. Just like Ben and Genghis and Terry, all legends, myths. Hey, Terry. I'm tired. I did wake up. I've been up for a while, but yesterday it was real sunny and hot. And when you work outside all day in the hot sun, it just drains you, huh? For sure. What's y'all weather like? I have a theory that every place in the world thinks that their weather changes faster than other places. And I don't think it's true. Raining there today, bit cloudy today, huh? I mean, there are for sure places like where the weather doesn't change much. But I don't know, man. Weather changes quickly every environment I've ever been in. Like you say, right? That UK, you get 4 seasons in a day. I don't think that's particular to you. I think lots of places get that. For instance, today the high is going to be 30. The high is going to be 30 Celsius today. It's going to be sunny and pretty warm. And then it's supposed to rain. And then tonight our low is 2. And tomorrow our high will be 9. You went shopping, forgot your wallet? That sucks. Yesterday had blue sky, rain, and hail. Yeah, you get big changes in your weather. But today we're getting 4 seasons. And it's gonna be hot and sunny. That's summer. It's gonna rain. That's spring. This temperature's gonna fall. And it's gonna be 2 degrees. From 30 to 2. With rain and sun all in one day. That's big weather change for one day. I think, and I've lived a lot of places, at least in the U.S., they all get big weather changes. It's windy, it's going to be calm this morning and windy here late evening. Real windy. 40-mile-an-hour winds predicted this evening, but nice and calm all day. Weather just changes. Tomorrow, yeah. Today our high is 30, tomorrow our high is 9. Yeah, we'll drop 28 Celsius degrees today, during the day. It's crazy. I'll work today because it should be good most of the day. Tomorrow, 9 degrees, it's not really the best for paint. especially if it's windy, because it dries everything up too quick. So I don't know, I might not work tomorrow. Out today on the channel Brimham Rocks. Not getting a lot of views. None of my videos are lately. About 200 views a day is all I'm getting. No new subscribers. It's 11C where you're at, Terry. Y'all do get big changes. It may be more often than a lot of places because you're an island. But really? On your news right now, Kingus? Why is that? Is it really happening? Is that like on the BBC? I follow the BBC online. I didn't see anything about that. I did see that I was reading, it was on the BBC. So I can't remember, but it's like a third of your forest, or was it 2/3 of the forest in England are not accessible to the public. I don't know what the LBC News is, Kings. But yeah, this BBC article was saying that there are protests going on from environmental groups in England, specifically England, I believe. Yeah, England. Because a lot of your forests, your forested areas, hey Baldrick, are not accessible to the public because they're, I don't know, the government's got them shut off for forestry, or it's private hunting land, and the public's not allowed to roam those areas. And environmental groups are holding a illegal trespass in mass on these areas. Have y'all heard anything about that? I read that. It was on the BBC. I just read that yesterday. But no, I haven't heard that people are stealing from supermarkets and distributing it to the poor. Where's that happening? Yeah, Terry says, where is that, Genghis? Yeah, good afternoon, John Chamber. Baldrick. Anyway, I do follow the BBC online, but I didn't hear anything about stealing from supermarkets. Are they just shoplifting? Are they openly just grabbing stuff, putting it in a trolley and taking it out? You know, you guys call things one thing, and you know, because to us a trolley is like a streetcar, and we call what you call trolley, we call shopping cart. And I do constantly get people in the comments on stuff like that correcting me. I don't get that, to be honest. Like the cultural differences that you have from us. It was on LBC this morning, James O'Brien. Huh. Hey, Choppy. Any things you do different, or called different, or pronounced different than us, Americans think that's charming. We do. We think all that's charming. Yeah, some places do call it a buggy. Terry, that's right. All these things you do different than us, Americans think is kind of cool. But transversely, you cannot stand what we do. You hate it. You don't think it's charming. I don't understand that. Like cutlery, or, you know, the way we pronounce certain things is always getting corrected. Ooh, we do it wrong. But we think what you do different is so charming. It was good win. Good, Choppy. I didn't know. I just find that interesting. I never really knew that before I started reacting. And a lot of the things that we do different from you, it comes from you. You just switched. Like cutlery. It came from the French. You started using it. The colonists adopted it from England, the way we use our cutlery. And then you switched. And now you hate the way we use our cutlery. But we got it from you. Yeah, it's just cultural makes it fascinating, the differences. I always have found the differences fascinating too, Terry. Like, oh, that's so cool. They do things different. But I didn't know that I guess collectively you feel like what we do different is just not cool at all. And we should stop. You know, another good example is soccer. We call it soccer. Where does soccer come from? It's an English invention. you called it soccer first, and then we started calling it soccer, and now you call it football. But we got it from you. Yeah, I know, Terry. There's no right or wrong. I agree with that 100%. I mean, right is your culture. So, with cutlery, the right way to do it for you is the way you do it. That's right. And for us, the way we do it, that's also right. So, in a sense, yes, Terry, there's no right or wrong. Right and wrong is determined by where you live. But a lot of the stuff that you don't like that we do, it came from you. Not a lot, all of it. It all came from you, including the way we use our cutlery. Yeah, Genghis, I like the difference. I'm not saying you specifically, Terry or Genghis or anyone here in the live stream, but just I get it a lot in the comments. So I see that there is a large portion that just thinks everything we do different is wrong and we should change. And yet, no American cares. I promise you, there's not one American that is like, why are they using their cutlery like that in England? No American cares. We don't think twice about it. And if we think about it or notice it, we think, oh, that's cool. They do it different. But we're not offended by it. We don't care about it. We don't think you should change. But collectively, no, they're not just ribbing Genghis. They're serious. And some of the cutlery stuff, you got to admit, again, I don't care how you use your cutlery. I do not care. I think it's cool that you use it different. But stop and think about it. We cut with our dominant hand. We put our knife in our dominant hand. Ben, are you still there? Or anyone? If you clean a fish, or if you use a knife for something other than eating, do you not put the knife in your dominant hand? Yeah. The willingness to learn. I think that's a big thing. Yeah, Terry, yeah. There should be understanding. There should be willingness to learn. But my question here I'm asking, when you use a knife other than eating, do you use that knife in your dominant hand? You gotta have an open mind, Genghis. I have an open mind, and I think you do too. But some people don't. That's what I'm saying. A lot of people don't have an open mind. And maybe the Americans are more open-minded in general than you. Used to use a cheese knife for steak just to upset your mom. You've never noticed, Choppy? If you have to use a knife for something, Don't you put it in your dominant hand? Especially if you're cleaning a fish or an animal. I don't know if Ben's still around, he might have to step away. But if anyone fishes and you're filleting a fish, I don't think you're using your non-dominant hand for that. It's too tricky. You got to put that knife in your dominant hand. But you put your knife in your right hand, even at the table. The standard way that I've seen is you hold your fork in your dominant hand, yeah, like Terry says. Your knife in your non-dominant hand when you're eating. Right, Ben, but when you're using it other than eating, you use it in your right. Although you do prefer your way of cutlery eating, yeah, because that is how you were taught and you're used to it now. You don't do formal dinners anymore. It can be quite irritating, right? I'm just saying, putting your knife in your dominant hand for cutting, it does seem a little more natural. And how do you eat peas? You don't scoop? Or, Ben, you eat corn, right? You, you don't fork your corn, you scoop it, don't you? And like when y'all are little, they have to break your kids of scooping with the knife. Kids do it naturally, right? Because it works. You scoop your peas, Chuck, but you have to. We don't scoop up a piece of steak. You know what I mean? We fork it, we stab a piece of meat. But sometimes you scoop like peas or mashed potatoes or corn. You scoop with your knife. It's natural. Kids do it because they know it's natural. But then you try to break yourself. Pointless peas on a plate, like using the back of the fork. Right? You can mash peas and use the back of the fork. You can't really, you gotta eat mashed potatoes or corn by scooping, don't you? I mean, I don't know, we're talking cutlery. It doesn't really matter. I'm open-minded, I don't care. And we think the way you do it is quaint. But a lot of you don't think the way we, and the way we do it, the English colonists did it that way. The English colonists did it that way. It came from France. It's not our fault. You do use your right hand to cut when eating, Ben. But you keep mine from my left. I'll eat my corn on the cob with my hands, okay. So you don't have corn off the cob. I don't see how you can eat corn, mashed potatoes, or peas without scooping. And the fork is meant to scoop. If the fork is only meant for stabbing, then why are the tines bent up? They could just be straight. The fork is made for scooping. So some of the things that we do, I don't know, it kind of makes sense. Yeah, it came from French etiquette, Genghis. But then the English started doing it. And then the English colonists are the ones, that's where it comes from. The Americans ended up doing it our way, not because of French colonists, but because of English colonists. But it originated in France, the way we eat. It doesn't matter. Who cares? That's my point. Who cares? Americans could care less. But a lot of you do care for some reason. I don't know why. Hey, you like a barbarian. Who cares how you eat? Eat with your hands. Transversely, you don't care that billions of people eat with chopsticks. that no one's upset about. But there are a lot of Brits that are upset about the way Americans eat. That doesn't make sense to me. How y'all think Dick Turpin ate? How did he eat? I wonder what his style of eating was. I didn't know much about Dick Turpin, but I was starting to look it up last night. And all I did know was what I said a couple days ago when Ben brought him up, was that he was a highwayman, Use chopstick. You can't use chopsticks, Ben? I'm pretty good with chopsticks. Well, Ben, you just have to keep practicing. It took Sage a while to get it. Sage, because he likes sushi, and we've been eating with chopsticks for a long time. But first we would go, and he would struggle with it, and I would say, "You want me to get you some?" Because they don't give you cutlery, at least here. If you go to the noodle house or to the sushi place, they don't bring you silverware. There's no silverware. They only bring you chopsticks. You have to ask for it. And I would say, and I don't mind asking. And I would say to Sage, let me get you some silverware. And he'd be like, no. And so he struggled with it for a long time, but because he stuck with it, he's now real good at it. Yeah, he was executed in 1739 for, well, was it horse theft, Genghis? I don't know. I don't know. I have it here. I was reading, but I think it had to do with something about, I don't think it was horse theft. Maybe. We'll read, Genghis. Well, you're doing a batch of bolognese today. I'm adding coconut milk to it this time. Huh. Why coconut milk? I mean, you could add milk or cream. Coconut milk's going to be sweet, though. That's kind of, I do like a little sweetness in my bolognese. Do you ever add sugar? I do. Sometimes a pinch of sugar. But coconut milk would add that creamy sweetness. I always like thinking about food. No, you're fine, Genghis. Whatever you can tell me. I don't know much about him. I was reading a little bit about him, and I was curious about his end. So, yeah, it'll be a good balance. I was curious about his end, and so I had jumped ahead because I didn't read all the articles that I pulled up. And I had jumped ahead and looked, and I don't remember it saying that that was the end. But let's see. I'm going to jump ahead again real quick and see what he was executed for. Okay, here it says his trial. What was the charge? Oh, hang on. There's this trial. Dick Turpin was caught in New York, right? Dick changed his name to John Palmer. I see that. Horse theft. That is it. Horse theft became a capital offense in 1545, punishable by death. During the 17th and 18th centuries, crime and violations of property rights are some of the most severely punished. Whose horse did he steal? Yeah, it says it's John Palmer, like Choppy says. Sometime around June 1737, Dick Turpin boarded at the ferry inn at Bro? I don't know how to pronounce that. Under the alias of John Palmer, traveling across the Humber estuary between the historic counties of the East Riding of Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. He posed as a horse trader and often hunted alongside local gentlemen. On October 2nd, 1738, Turpin shot another man's gamecock in the street. While being rebuked by John Robinson, he then threatened to shoot him also. 3 East Riding justices, George Crowe, Hugh Bethel, and Marmaduke Constable, traveled to, is that Borough? And took written depositions about the incident. They intended to bind him over, but Turpin refused to pay the required surety and was committed to the House of Correction at Beverly. Turpin was escorted to Beverly by the parish constable. He made no attempt at escape. It has been suggested that Turpin may have been depressed about failures in his life. Okay, so that's not horse theft. Robert Appleton, clerk of the peace for East Riding, The man whose account details the above incident later reported that the three justices of the peace made inquiries to how Palmer had made his money, suspecting that his lifestyle was funded by criminal activities. Turpin claimed that he was a butcher who had fallen into debt and that he had levanted from his home in Long Sutton, Lincolnshire. When contacted, the JP at Long Sutton confirmed that John Palmer had lived there for about 9 months, but that he was suspected of stealing sheep and had escaped the custody of the local constable. Delamere also suspected that Palmer was a horse thief and had taken several depositions supporting this view, told the three justices of the peace that he would prefer him to be detained. The three JPs now presumed that the case was too serious for Palmer to remain at Beverly House of Correction, demanded sureties for his appearances at York. Turpin refused, and so on October 16th, he was transferred to York Castle in handcuffs. So, I guess it was this J.P. Long Sutton in Lincolnshire was like, yeah, that guy's a horse thief. And the JPs that caught him were like, all right, let's take him to York. But it looks like he was kind of apprehended while he was pretending to be John Palmer. And on October 2nd, 1738, he shot another man's gamecock in the street. So that's what got him arrested. Shooting another man's gamecock in the street? Huh. Oh, Bruff? Okay. I'm sorry, Chavi. I didn't know. I was trying to figure out which way to pronounce that. Bruff. Okay. So, yeah, they sent him to York, and eventually he was hanged, right? I think eventually he was hanged. I mean, I'll just look ahead. He was sentenced to death. Eventually, he was charged with the theft of a gentleman named Creasy. He was charged with theft of his horses, a mare worth £3, a foal worth 20 shillings, and a gelding worth £3. The indictment stated that the alleged offenses had occurred at Welton on March 1st, 1739, and described Turpin as John Palmer, alias Richard Turpin, late of the Castle of York in the County of York laborer. So, they got him on that. They executed him on April 7th, 1739. Turpin and John Steed were taken through York by open cart to Knavesmere, which was then the city's equivalent of London's Tyburn Gallows. Turpin behaved himself with amazing assurance, bowed to the spectators as he passed. He climbed a ladder to the gallows and spoke to his executioner. York had no permanent hangman, and it was accustomed to pardon a prisoner on condition that he acted as an executioner. On this day, the pardoned man was a fellow highwayman, Thomas Hadfield. On account in the Gentleman's Magazine for April 7, 1739, notes Turpin's brashness. Turpin behaved in an undaunted manner as he mounted the ladder. Feeling his right leg tremble, he spoke a few words to the topsman, then threw himself off and expired in 5 minutes. The short drop method of hanging meant that those executed were killed by slow strangulation, and so Turpin was left hanging until late afternoon before being cut down and taken to a tavern in Castlegate. The next morning, his body was buried in the graveyard at St. George's Church, Fishergate, opposite what is now the Roman Catholic St. George's Church. On the Tuesday following the burial, the corpse was reportedly stolen by body snatchers. The theft of cadavers for medical research was a common enough occurrence and was possibly tolerated by the local authorities. Turpin's body is purported to lie in St. George's graveyard, although some doubts persist as to the grave's authenticity. So they don't even think they know where, they think his body was Body snatched. At 33, not too bad for the time. That was his age, 33. Says he was an English highwayman whose exploits were romanticized following his execution in York for horse theft. Turpin may have followed his father's trade as a butcher early in his life. But yeah, he was born in September 1705. He died in April 1739. He's also known for a fictional overnight ride from London to York on his horse, Black Bess, a story that was made famous by the Victorian novelist William Harrison Ainsworth almost 100 years after Turpin's death. But I thought I read that that story is false. Am I wrong? Okay, I kind of jumped to the end of how it all ended for him. If it was now, Turpin would have been buried in an unmarked grave. He was a thief and his body was stolen. That is ironic, huh? So, I did jump to the end, but I have another article. This is the one I was really kind of interested in. And it's called The Truth About Dick Turpin, England's Most Notorious Highwayman. So the first article is just kind of an overview of his life. But I want to know the truth about him. What's true, what's not true. Because he became a legend, Black Bess was one strong horse, huh? That was his horse's name. I read that. But, you know, people become a legend, and aside from the legend of Ben Burden, most of them aren't true. Most of them are like a lot of made up stuff. So I'm going to read this little bit. It refers to William Harrison Ainsworth's novel Rockwood featured the highwayman Dick Turpin undertaking a 200-mile overnight ride from Kent to York to establish an alibi. That's interesting. The fact this ride had been done by someone else 30 years before Turpin was born was neither here nor there. The story struck a chord with the public. So this was written in 1834, you know, after he's dead, you know what I mean? He's not around. The Penny Dreadful book, Black Bess, or The Knight of the Road, repeated the tale of Turpin's ride, while also portraying him as a dashing gentleman of the road, who robbed the rich and protected the weak. Artists, playwrights, and later film and TV producers added more layers to the Turpin story, embedding in the public imagination the notion that Turpin was the Robin Hood of the 18th century. As we will see, nothing could be further from the truth. A lot of the stories about Dick Turpin were changed for children's books, huh? So yeah, starting back in 1839, 1834, he started to be immortalized in print. The early days of the highwaymen. The first highwaymen were often former soldiers who had served in the English Civil War. Travelers out on England's unprotected roads were easy pickings for these men, and a lack of witnesses meant highway robbery posed less of a risk of being caught and hanged than other forms of robbery. The most famous highwayman of this period was James Hind. I've never heard of James Hind. Hind was a soldier who fought the Royalists in the Civil War. Some say he even assisted in the escape of King Charles II after the disastrous Battle of Worcester in 1651. During the protectorate of Oliver Cromwell, Hind turned to highway robbery, but unusually only robbed from supporters of Cromwell's regime. His continuing support for the Royalists made him a folk hero to supporters of the exiled Charles, starting a pattern of highwayman hero worship, whether it was deserved or not. Hind was caught and tried for treason instead of robbery as punishment for his royal sympathies. He was found guilty and suffered the agonizing death of a traitor when he was hanged, drawn, and quartered in Worcester in 1652. So this guy, Hind, James Hind, he kind of started the romanticizing of highwaymen. Most haunted, yeah. Yeah, Dick Turpin haunts everywhere, Terry. He's up haunting in New York. He's haunting in other places. Remember, there was the one thing I read about his horse haunts a place. And Dick Turpin's ghostly. So it says, a true gentleman of the road. It was a Frenchman called Claude Duval, who we have to thank for the image of the highwayman as a dashing, well-dressed rogue with impeccable manners. Duval was everything Dick Turpin was not. Duval's family had sheltered royalist exiles in France following their defeat in the Civil War. After the restoration of Charles II in 1660, Duval traveled to England to work as a footman for the Duke of Richmond. After that proved neither existing nor lucrative, Duval turned his hand to a career that was infinitely more suited to his talents, highway robbery. So this guy, Duval, he was a real fancy dresser. He was a real dignified gentleman. And he became a highwayman. He was French. And so uh, that helped create this idea that highwaymen, or these classified maybe, it said he had impeccable manners. One story has this Duval holding up a stagecoach and agreeing to take just half of the owner's money in exchange for a dance with the owner's wife. So this kind of also made highwaymen seem like, oh, they're all like that. According to this is from the History Channel. So I'm kind of trusting it. Now then, it says Swift Nick, another guy, the Night Rider. It's just not impeccable manners and sartorial elegance that we wrongly associate with Dick Turpin. One of his most famous exploits, the ride through the night from Kent to York, was actually carried out by a man called John Swift Nick Nevison, some 30 years before Turpin was even born. Another former soldier, this guy Nevison, turned to highway robbery in the 1670s, and like Charles Duval before him, gained a reputation as a courteous, well-dressed gentleman of the road. Nevison made his famous ride in 1676. He robbed a man at Gad's Hill near Rochester in Kent. To give himself an alibi in case he was later accused, Nevison rode all night from Rochester to York, 200 miles north. Arriving early in the morning, Nevison engaged in a game of bowls. That's a cool, I like that. I like that game. With the Lord Mayor of the city. When he was later arrested for the Gad's Hill robbery, Nevison produced the mayor as a witness and escaped the gallows. He wasn't able to put off his appointment with the hangman for long, though. Despite a reputation for nonviolence, he was eventually arrested for the murder of a constable and hanged at Knavesmere in York in 1684. It was the same place Turpin would meet his end 55 years later. So a lot of the myths and the things attributed to Dick Turpin, he didn't do. He used to have sandwiches and cakes with whoever he robbed. Did he? Choppy, or is that just the story you've been told? Sounds like a Scarlet Pimpernel, a royalist. So yeah. So then he became the most famous highway of them all. Born in 1705, Dick Turpin apprenticed as a butcher, the same profession as his father. It was a profession that would bring him into the orbit of one of London's most notorious criminal gangs, the Gregorys. The Gregorys stole livestock, cattle rustlers, which meant they needed the service of a butcher to cut up the meat so it could be sold more easily. Turpin was only too happy to oblige. It wasn't long before he was a close associate of the gang, eventually taking over a tavern that became the Gregorys' main meeting place. Impressed with the large sums of money the gang was making, Turpin abandoned innkeeping in favor of crime. The gang switched from stealing livestock to raiding homes. While Turpin kept away from the Gregorys' early invasions, the temptation of easy riches proved too much, and he eventually joined in. The invasions were brutal. Not only did the gang break into homes, but they also attacked the people who lived there. Any resistance was met with extreme violence. One particularly nasty incident that Turpin was directly involved in was an attack on a 70-year-old farmer who was beaten with pistols, dragged around his home by his hair, and had boiling water poured on him. The Gregory gang was eventually broken up after a crackdown by the authorities, and many of its members were hanged. Turpin escaped the clutches of the law, switched to the profession that he is now most associated with, so he started out just kind of like a thug in a criminal gang. Turpin's career as a highwayman lasted less than 2 years. Between 1735 and 1737, Turpin and his fellow highwaymen committed a series of high-profile robberies that gained Turpin the name. They gained Turpin the Butcher, as he was known on wanted posters, notoriety across southeast England. Along with his accomplice Thomas Roden, Turpin hit several coaches and single travelers. After a 100-pound bounty was placed on his head, the pair decided to split up. Turpin is rumored to have traveled to the Netherlands to lay low. Roland was eventually captured and transported. He returned to the highway robbery in 1737, joining up with fellow highwaymen Matthew King and Stephen Potter for a spree of robberies between March and April that abruptly ended when a horse they had stolen was tracked down to an inn in Whitechapel, that the gang frequented. In the melee that followed, King was shot and killed while Turpin escaped. The bounty on his head was raised to 200 pounds. He had no choice but to flee London and go into hiding. After changing his name to John Palmer, Turpin began a new career as a horse thief in East Yorkshire and Lancashire. In July 1737, Turpin stole 3 horses from Pinchbeck in Lincolnshire, left one of the horses with his father. The authorities soon put 2 and 2 together and realized the horse was stolen by his son. Turpin was arrested and imprisoned in the Yorkshire town of Beverley. We already read about this, basically. So, according to the History Channel, which I think is pretty reputable, he didn't do any of that stuff, and he wasn't the guy that he's purported to be. Turpin would fit in with Sonny and Cher. Gypsies, tramps, and thieves. Sonny and Cher made it famous in London. Y'all know that, right? That's where they got famous. They weren't doing so good over here in the U.S. I believe it was Jimi Hendrix that said, "Hey, man, you ought to go to London. They really dig you over there." This is a true story. I think it was Jimi Hendrix. And Sonny and Cher went to London and gained popularity. But so, did y'all know what I just said? Like that famous riot? He didn't do that. Y'all probably knew that already, right? So that's the most famous thing attributed to him, right? That ride from Kent to, where was it? York. Cattle rustlers from Dumfries. They were sent to Carla. Grandma was horrified what she read, right? I'm curious now, how many people believe all the myths about him? Is it the common thing to just believe he did make that ride? Or did most everybody know, like, yeah, he didn't really do that? That was somebody else, like 50 years earlier. And he wasn't really like a well-dressed gentleman. He started out as a thug. And he was only a highwayman for 2 years. And then he was a horse thief. You didn't? You thought he'd done it just not in a night. It's weird how these myths and legends get started and then they become, as far as him being a modern day Robin Hood, everything he did was for personal gain, it sounds like. How is he a modern day Robin Hood? And apparently he wasn't all that fancy dressed. He wasn't necessarily a ladies' man. He didn't have that great. It's just fictionalized, exaggerated, yeah. I did see that many movies have been made about him, all the way back to silent films. The first movie made about Dick Turpin is made in Hollywood, and it was a silent film. So all these books and all these poems and all these stories and all these films and all these interpretations have really turned him into something that he absolutely was not. Now he might have been charming. He might have been well liked by some people. You know what I mean? Some characters are. Like Bonnie and Clyde, we talked about it. Billy the Kid. They had charm, and that may start to begin the stories. You know what I mean? Like the guy's got a certain je ne sais quoi about him, and people in general start to like, so long as he's not robbing you. Then they start to get popularized, and then it just grows from there, right? I think that's true about like Billy the Kid. He was infamous, yeah. You know, I think that's true about some people. Who do you think? So we have a Robin Hood of the U.S., real life person. You know what I mean? Like Dick Turpin was real. Sometimes I think you call him the real Robin Hood. And we have someone in the U.S., if you ask Americans, who was the Robin Hood of the U.S.? I don't know, maybe half of them would say this name. Not everybody would think of it, but some people would. Y'all know who that is? Especially during this guy's day. He was purported to be the Robin Hood of the U.S. Truth was, no, he wasn't. He wasn't given to the poor and stealing from the rich. He was stealing. Y'all don't know who I'm talking about, I don't guess. Huh? No guesses. The most likely person in the U.S. that we would call the Robin Hood of the U.S. Pour myself a cup of coffee. I bet Dick Turpin was probably, maybe he was a cool guy. I mean, how cool can you be if you're a thief? And in Texas, back in the day, a cattle thief or a horse thief, that was worse than a murderer. It is probably how it was thought of there too, right? When you stole a man's cattle, or you stole a man's horse, that's what we call no good so-and-so. Yeah, if you stole a man's wife, maybe if you murdered somebody, they might have had it coming. But if you stole a man's horse or cattle, you were you were not good. So I don't see any guesses, but Jesse James, you've heard that name, right? The outlaw Jesse James was often referred to as the Robin Hood of the U.S. He was stealing from the poor, steal from the rich and give them to the poor. You don't know much about Jesse James? He's a famous outlaw and criminal. He was an ex-soldier for the South in the Civil War. And in those days, post-Civil War, understandably, a lot of Southern soldiers were bitter. They fought and lost. And it did well with a lot of them, Jesse James included. He would rob the government. He would hold up trains. He would hold up banks. You know, he wasn't stealing from the common man, but he was a brutal criminal. Him and his brothers and his gang. And he wasn't giving that money out to the poor. He did it for his own benefit. But a lot of people rallied around him because, you know, he's stealing from the government. You already like green jackets? I don't know what does that mean? Rumors? Green jackets? I mean, I can tell you a little bit about him. He was born September 5th, 1847, died in 1882. He was an outlaw, a bank robber, a train robber, and leader of the James Younger Gang, raised in the Little Dixie area of Missouri. He and his brother Frank James joined pro-Confederate guerrillas. So they kind of carried on, what they were doing was carrying on the Civil War after the Civil War as guerrillas. um, they were known as the Bushwhackers, operating in Missouri and Kansas during the American Civil War. So I guess both during and somewhat after. They were called the Bushwhackers for hiding in woods. Okay, green jackets. Yeah, okay, so that's what you're saying, Genghis. Yeah, they were bushwhack people. They would hide out in the woods and bushwhack people. They were accused of committing atrocities against Union soldiers and civilian abolitionists, including the Centralia Massacre. This has happened in Missouri in 1864 during the Civil War. There's a massacre where the Southern soldiers just basically massacred civilians in Missouri. And he was a part of that. So he's not a good guy. But I don't know what you know about Missouri and the Civil War, but Missouri was made to be a free state, I believe. Were they made to be a slave state? Anyway, Missouri was entered into the Union, and they were split, really. A lot of Missourians felt one way and a lot felt the other way about the slavery issue, but they were admitted in, and a lot of them were bitter about the way they were admitted into the Union, and they were split 50-50 on who was pro-slave and who wasn't in a state. And so that's why a massacre happened there in Missouri. Centralia. He was a part of that. After the war, Jesse and Frank robbed banks, stagecoaches, and trains across the Midwest, gaining national fame and often popular sympathy despite the brutality of their crimes. The James brothers were most active as members of their own gang until 1876, when, as a result of their attempted robbery of a bank in Northfield, Minnesota, several members of the gang were captured or killed. They continued to crime for several years after. Eventually, Jesse James was shot and killed by Robert Ford, a new recruit to the gang who hoped to collect the reward on James. So he was shot by one of his own gang members who turned on him because he was wanted, dead or alive. So this new guy was like, I'll take him dead. Popular portrayals of James as an embodiment of Robin Hood, robbing from the rich, giving to the poor, are a case of romantic revisionism, as there is no evidence the gang shared any loot from their robberies with anyone outside themselves. Scholars and historians have characterized James as one of many criminals inspired by the regional insurgencies of ex-Confederates following the Civil War, rather than a manifestation of alleged economic justice or of frontier lawlessness. James continued to be one of the most famous figures from the era, and his life has been dramatized and memorialized several times. Have I lived in Kentucky? No, but I have spent time in Kentucky, Kingus. Yeah, spent time in Kentucky. I've lived near Kentucky, like Tennessee and Indiana. So I've lived in that area, and Kentucky's gorgeous, the bluegrass state. And I've been to many a bluegrass festival in Kentucky. They hold every year. It's called the Festival of the Bluegrass, and it's one of the biggest bluegrass festivals in the U.S. because that's where bluegrass comes from, Kentucky. You ever see the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And George Clooney puts on an accent for that movie. That's a Kentucky accent that George Clooney puts on for that movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It's a gorgeous, gorgeous state. It's so gorgeous. It's lush and green, rolling hills, beautiful rivers. If you're fascinated with Kentucky, I do see why. Beautiful state. So yeah, even Jesse James, just not true. The stuff that they associate with him, he gets immortalized, but he's really a vicious character. Sounds like Dick Turpin was kind of the same way. If y'all could live anywhere in the U.S., where would y'all live? Genghis, would it be Kentucky? And then where at in Kentucky? Is there a city in Kentucky that you fancy? Do you know the capital of Kentucky? Or the largest city in Kentucky? I've been to Churchill Downs as well, the horse race track. Yeah, it's nice, nice state. Yeah, I'm curious, where would y'all live if you could live anywhere in the U.S.? Or would you not want to ever live in the U.S.? Forget about politics. Memphis? Do you like music, Choppy? West Virginia? Well, yeah, Choppy. Memphis is got as well as Nashville, but Memphis, where Elvis Presley, Graceland, and also the birthplace of the blues, W.C. Handy, Sun Records is in Memphis. Sun Records brought up Elvis, Johnny Cash, um, Jerry Lee Lewis. Other stars were signed to Sun Records. I've been to Sun Records. You can visit Sun Records, where Elvis recorded his early stuff along with Johnny Cash, another famous artist. Genghis, you don't need a lot of money to move to West Virginia. It's one of the poorest states, and property is cheap. It's beautiful, no doubt about it. I have been to West Virginia. It's gorgeous, gorgeous country, and poverty is rampant. West Virginia is one of the poorest states. You wouldn't want to live anywhere too hot, though, and somewhere with a lot of green. I would say Bend, Arkansas. That's your best bet. Not too hot, all 4 seasons, but not too cold either. So they have a nice summer. It gets a little hot, but not too bad. They have a nice winter. It gets pretty cold, but not too bad. Not too long. They just have full 4 seasons. It's very green in Arkansas. It's got mountains, the Ozark Mountains, beautiful lakes in Arkansas. Lakes that are so crystal clear you can't even believe it. Arkansas also has a lot of poverty. Arkansas has some good fishing. Arkansas is known for hunting. Poor, but one of the most beautiful, yeah. Oftentimes, Genghis, some of the most beautiful places in the U.S. have a lot of poverty. Appalachia's that way. They have Tennessee or anywhere in the Midwest, Terry says. Yeah, Ben, I think Arkansas is a good state because it's just right there in the center. And like some states are, like Kansas it's in the center, which is good for weather, but Kansas is just flat. And Arkansas is just awesome. Kansas is full of agriculture. Nebraska. But the Midwest, huh, Terry? Tennessee. Tennessee's beautiful. I've lived in Tennessee, and it is also gorgeous, especially on the eastern side of Tennessee, which is where I lived. But Memphis and Nashville are beautiful cities. Memphis is on the east side. Memphis borders Arkansas. You're like less busy, Terry. I mean, also Arkansas is less busy. That might be a good place for Terry. You can live in Arkansas in places and never see a soul. I mean, if you really want less busy, you go to Montana or Wyoming or North Dakota or South Dakota. That's less busy. Those are big, especially Montana is one of the biggest states and one of the lowest populations. So it's wide open out there. But it gets cold. They have harsh weather. Also, like the Badlands. Maybe you've heard of the Badlands of the Dakotas. Ain't nobody there. You can move to the Badlands and never see a soul. But the weather's bad. The weather's bad, especially in winter. And it's barren. That's why it's called the Badlands. Anyway, that's interesting where y'all would move. Sounds like Tennessee. You can find some good places in Tennessee, though, Terry. Oh, yeah, Alaska would be good, right? You like the cold? Yeah, Alaska, you could definitely find some less busy places, Terry. Alaska. You know what you might like is what we call the UP of Michigan, the Upper Peninsula. So Michigan's in two parts, separated by the Great Lake. And so, Michigan doesn't, not all of Michigan touches. And the Upper Peninsula is gorgeous and not very inhabited. No big cities up there in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I've never been, but I've always wanted to. All right, Michigan looks good. I mean, I have flown in and out of Detroit. I don't count that. Michigan looks good. Yeah, I would like to, especially go to some parts. Anyway, I should wrap things up. So, did I learn about Dick Turpin? I feel like I should have learned probably sooner. And his ghost haunt all over the place. His ghosts are everywhere. If I could live anywhere in the U.S., and I kind of have, I don't know. That's a weird question. I've never asked myself. Nobody said Hawaii. Because that's kind of nice. Oh, Angry Grandma on YouTube lives in Michigan? Where they live? Yeah, I don't know where I would. I feel like if I could live anywhere in the U.S., well, I feel like I can. I guess I live in Dallas. So I guess that's my choice. I've been kind of all over, lived in 13 states. I just kind of find my happiness wherever I'm at. If I could live anywhere in England or in the UK, I don't know if I could pick that. Genghis, I've been to every little corner of Texas you can imagine. Like I've lived all over Texas. But yeah, I've been all over Texas. From the top to the bottom, every major city, you name it, I've been there. Bunch of the small towns, but every major city, San Antonio, Houston, Austin, Amarillo, Lubbock. Yeah, see you, Terry. If I could live anywhere in the UK, it's hard for me to say. Especially, sight unseen. I mean, I do like Somerset. I do like Yorkshire. So, somewhere there. I do like Scotland. I do like Wales. Yeah, whew, that'd be hard to pick. I have to do more research. Anyway, yeah, good luck, Terry. Not. But, have a good day. I don't know who you're playing. Genghis, have a good day. Good seeing you here today. Ben, have a good day. Shoppy, have a good day. I think that's it, huh? Pretty much. It's weird how it always says there's more people here than there are on my screen. John Chambers, have a good day. But yeah, good having you all here in the live stream. I hope everybody has a good day. Cheers. Way from Dallas, Texas, signing out.